Welcome to episode 141 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the tale of Odysseus and the story of Odysseus Continues His Tale, with the story of the Leather Bag of Aeolus and the Laestrygonians, Circe. After this, we came to an island which was the dwelling of Eolis, the son of Hippotas, a cherished friend of the gods. This island floated about in the sea. It was circled by a wall of bronze built along the edge of a steep rock which rimmed the island. On it was the palace of Eolis. He had 6 sons and 6 daughters, and with them and his wife he feasted day after day. This good ruler was our host for a full month. He asked us all about Troy, about the Argives and their return from Ilium. We told him everything in great detail. When we finally begged him to help us on our way home, he was very willing. Among other things, he gave us a taut leather bag. In it were many winds which blew across the earth, for Zeus had made Eolis the keeper of the winds, and he had the power to loose those he wanted and to bid them fly or stay. He himself bound the bag to the ship with a silver cord and tied it up so well that not even a breath of air could escape. But he had not imprisoned all the winds, for when we set out, the gentlest west wind swelled our sails and would have brought us safely home, had not our own folly plunged us into disaster. We had been traveling for 9 days and 9 nights. On the 10th night, we were near the coast of Ithaca, that I could see the watchfires burning on the shore, and then, of all times, I had to grow irresistibly sleepy. I had been up and managing the sails the entire voyage, for I wanted to get home as quickly as possible and did not wish to entrust this important business to anyone else. Now, while I slept, my companions began to discuss what might be in the bag of King Eolis that he had given us in parting, and it seemed that all of them thought it must be filled with silver and gold. In the end, one of them, an envious fellow, said, "This Odysseus is honored and made much of wherever he goes. Look at the spoils he carried off from Troy alone. But we, who endured exactly the same hardships and dangers, are going home empty-handed. To crown it all, Eolis has given him a whole sack of gold and silver. How about looking into it? At least, finding out how much treasure it contains?" The others instantly agreed to this unfortunate suggestion. They untied the bag, but hardly had it been opened before the winds all rushed out and drove our ship back to the high seas. The noise of the gale woke me. When I saw the disaster which had overtaken me, I felt like jumping overboard and drowning in the waves. But I thought better of it and decided to bear up under whatever might come. The rage of the tempest drove us back to the island of Eolis. Here I left my men on the ships and went to the palace with one friend and a herald. We found the king, his wife, and his children at their midday meal. They were amazed to see us, but when they heard the cause of our return, the ruler of the winds rose from his chair and cried, "Vilest of mortals, it is clear that the gods are pursuing you with their wrath. But a man whom immortals hate must not be my guest, and I shall not assist him any further. Leave this house, you who are accursed." And with that he drove me from his threshold. With heavy hearts we again boarded our ships and sailed on. For 7 days we rowed, but saw no land. Then we gave up hoping. At last we sighted a coast and a city with many towers. Its name was Telepylus, and the people were called Laestrygonians, as we learned on later. We entered an excellent harbor, protected on all sides by rocks, so that the waters in the bay were smooth as a mirror. I anchored my ship, climbed to a rugged height, and looked around. Nowhere did I see plowed fields, farmers, shepherds, or cattle. All I could detect was smoke from a great city mounting to the sky, so I sought 2 friends and a herald to reconnoiter. They found a path leading through the woods and walked toward the smoke until they were near the city. Here they met a girl carrying a pitcher. She was the daughter of Telepylus, king of the of the Laestrygonians, and was on her way to the spring called Artacia, from which the inhabitants of the place drew water. The girl was so tall that they marveled at her stature. She spoke to them in a friendly manner and told them that they wanted to know about her father's palace, the country, the city, and its people. But when they actually reached the city and approached the palace, they froze in horror. The queen of the Laestrygonians confronted them, tall as a mountain. It seemed that the Laestrygonians were man-eating giants. She lost no time in calling her husband, who at once seized one of my envoys and gave orders to prepare him for the evening meal. The two others fled in mortal terror, but the king roared orders to pursue them, and over 1,000 giants, fully armed, came and hurled stones at our ships, so that the air was filled with the crash of timbers and the groans of the dying. I had anchored my own ship in the shelter of a cliff, where it was safe from the missiles. Now I took into those who were still alive and made off with all possible speed. The other ships sank, and with them, alas, many of my comrades. Crowded into a single ship, we rowed on and came to the island of Aea. This was the home of a beautiful goddess, child of the sun god, and Circe, daughter of Oceanus, and sister to King Aeetes. Her name was Circe, and she lived in a splendid palace. But when we entered the bay of the island, we did not know who lived there. We cast anchor, and almost dead with fatigue and sorrow, lay down and slept for 2 days and nights on the grassy shore. On the third day I took my sword and lance and set out to explore the island. Soon I saw smoke rising, but mindful of the terrible adventure we had just survived, I decided to return to my friends. It was a long time since we had sufficient food. One of the gods must have taken pity on us, for suddenly I saw a stag with broad antlers running out of the woods and down to the stream. I cast my lance, and it struck him in the back, coming out at the belly. Then I planted my foot against the animal, drew out the spear, twisted myself a rope of willow withes, bound together its ankles, and carried it to the ship on my back. It was so heavy a burden that I had to lean on my lance in walking. My companions, they started up joyfully when they saw the fine beast on my shoulders. We roasted the stag, fetched what bread and wine we still had on the ship, and sat down to eat. Not until now did I report the column of smoke I had seen mounting from some habitation. But my men received the news dejectedly, for they remembered the caves of the Cyclops and the land of the Laestrygonians. I was the only one who kept up his courage, and I divided the crew into 2 groups. One of them I was to lead, the other Eurylochus. Then he shook lots in a brazen helmet. The lot fell on Eurylochus, and so he and 22 men set out toward where I had seen the smoke. They soon came to the stately stone palace of Circe, lying in a fair green valley. But imagine their amazement when they saw shaggy maned lions and wolves with long, sharp teeth prowling around in the walled court in front of the palace. They looked at these beasts in terror and were just going to flee from that uncanny place when the animals surrounded them. But oddly enough, they advanced slowly, wagging their tails like dogs who go to meet their master and to receive a tidbit. He has been brought from a feast, and they behaved in an altogether gentle and docile fashion. Later, we discovered that they were really men whom Circe had changed into animals. Since these beasts made no motion to stop my companions, they took courage again and approached the gates of the palace. From within, they heard the beautiful voice of Circe. She was seated at her loom, weaving a mantle such as only a goddess can contrive, and singing as she worked. The first to see her and to rejoice in what he saw was Polites, my particular friend. At his advice, the rest called to Circe to come out, and she came to the gate and smilingly invited them all in. All followed her except Eurylochus. He was a cautious man, tempered moreover by bad experience, and he suspected some trickery or another. The rest entered the palace, where Circe bade them to be seated on sumptuous chairs. She had cheese, flour, honey, and pranium wine brought before them, and proceeded to mix these ingredients to a custard. But as she worked, she secretly added baneful drugs which would make her guests forget their native land and rob them of their true form. And the dish did its work. As soon as my men had eaten of it, they were turned into bristly swine, commenced to grunt, and Circe drove them into sties, and threw to them acorns and wild cherries. And here's where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.